Welcome to Your Asian Besties, a podcast where we reflect on our life experiences and what's helping us along the way. I'm Leah.
I'm Ray.
And I'm Maryn.
Each episode, we talk about a topic unscripted and unfiltered. Today, we'll be talking about women's bodies and health from periods to perimenopause and beyond. So buckle in. We're in for a pretty crazy one here. So as I was doing light research, not like really research on the topic, but wanted to give some more, I guess, background on perimenopause, which we'll get to in a bit. I stumbled upon this quote by Catherine Schubert, who's the president and CEO of the Society for Women's Health Research. That's swhr.org. And she says, "It gives me hope that as more people are having conversations about midlife and aging and menopause and perimenopause, the more we talk about it, the more we erase the stigma." So that's what we're doing here today. We're erasing the stigma. So let's get to it. And I wanted to open this up to both of you and kind of steer, as usual, our past about just women's bodies and health in general. And the biggest milestone, I think, that, comes to all our minds is having a period. So I'm curious, what was your first distinct memory of having a female body, of getting your period? Were you prepared for it? Was it surprising? Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Maryn, you want to jump
I don't know
into
that I remember the exact moment, but I'm pretty sure it was sixth grade. So it was the beginning of middle school. And it was a very rude awakening because, I didn't really have any warning. Nobody talked to me about it.
Really?
And
Oh, no.
Not really.
Wait, so it just happened and you're like, oh, what?
Well, I can't remember the first time, but I do remember having many surprises and many cleanup situations because you just don't know. You know what I mean? People just give you those really giant pads. You know, some moms give you those pads. And they're terrible. And nobody even talked to me about the hormone part of it or how that would affect moods or anything. I think that came later, maybe in college. But I hated it. It was really embarrassing because I definitely had those situations where you bled in someone's car and, things like that. So, and it seemed very shameful. It seemed like something that we had to hide, even though all of us were going through it. And so I remember if you had to borrow a pad or a tampon, you would say oh, do you have any leaves or twigs? That's what we would call them.
What?
We had a code name, because it was, and then you had your secret little bag where you would hide it.
Yes,
and go to the
I
bathroom.
had a secret bag in my backpack. Yeah.
And it's so annoying. Now I just don't even care.
Wait, so what do you mean no one taught? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm curious more about what do you mean nobody talked to you about this?
I mean, my parents didn't. I don't think.
I don't think your dad would.
I don't remember. My dad didn't even know that women get periods. He's so clueless. So I don't know. I mean, you guys got talks from your parents or something?
No, but school.
No.
Didn't you get the whole video?
And I don't know if I just don't remember.
Wait, Maryn, were you?
I mean, they gave us some free tampons or something.
Yeah.
Were you part of the Girl Scouts from our elementary school?
Oh, they definitely didn't talk about it in Girl Scouts.
We
Girl
talked
Scouts
about
was so conservative. Mine was.
Oh, okay. Maybe you were different Girl Scout troop, but Troop 973.
Shout out.
Yeah, I thought it was part of Girl Scouts, but I remember one of the moms, she kind of was part of organizing this workshop, I guess, and so all of the girls were there, and we were I don't remember. I don't think we didn't have PowerPoints at the time, but I remember there was some kind of centralized education going on that was being delivered to us, and we had all these little tiny bags, and we didn't have tampons. We did have the pads because we were learning about toxic shock syndrome. I remember that in the workshop. And so I was like, ooh, I'm never going to use a tampon. That sounds so scary. And so that whole workshop, we got the free, really humongous pads that we had to hide away in those bags that they gave us. And I completely agree with you. Like, I felt a lot of shame, like taboo, and like, I don't know, we were all like, what are we learning? This feels so strange. And I don't know, it felt really awkward. What about you, Leah? You were talking about like
Yeah, so
learning from school.
in school, I remember in 6th grade they split up the boys and the girls. I have no idea what
Mm.
they talked to the boys about. For the girls, we watched like a video about anatomy and stuff, and we got the free goodies, which I remember the boys coming back to the class were like, "Ooh, you guys got free gifts," and we were like all trying to hide it, like like don't worry about
It's
it.
not a gift.
It's not a gift.
But
No.
yeah, and then I also remember we had basically an anonymous question box where everyone wrote any questions they had about body changes and stuff, and like folding into pieces of paper, and then yeah, the teacher would like pull it out. Of course, the teacher would read some and be like, "No, not gonna." Yeah, but yeah, it was like a very awkward day. But the reason I was gonna say it wasn't a surprise to me is that my sister got her period first. She came home from like 5th or 6th grade, had no idea what happened, got sent home, like bled through her pants, and my mom picked her up. I had no idea what's going on because I'm only 2 years older than her, and I didn't end up getting my period until I was 14, like in high school. So
Nice.
it was great because I knew what was coming, but I was like, what happened? I was like, you're bleeding, like you got a cut down there. And I just remember being so oblivious to like, what does it mean to bleed down there? So this was before that class. Yeah. So I was definitely prepared by the time we had the class, and even more prepared when I actually got it. Which, yeah, I was one of the late bloomers too, because I think the opposite was like, when am I gonna get it? Like, when is this gonna happen to me? So I think there's some downside, but the nice thing was not being surprised.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think they must have done something because I have a vague memory in our homeroom class, but I think the only thing I remember is like the condom part. I feel like that kind of like just blocked everything else out. They did not split us up.
But you got
'Cause
condoms?
That was when we got.
Wait,
Or do they
what?
teach you how
And
to?
they were showing us.
In the same workshop?
Maybe that was in high school. My memory is really not good, but I don't remember anything. Like, I'm sure they did some anatomy. Like, I remember even elementary school, they did some like male versus female anatomy with like jelly beans. But you don't really get it. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
I just don't remember anything significant about periods.
Yeah.
Like being taught to me.
Yeah. So yeah, I can
And
only
it is
imagine.
scary. It's really scary. And then the fact that you have the part that pisses me off is the shame and the fact that you
Right.
hide
Yes.
it.
I don't. Yeah.
Yes.
For the longest time, like, when you go to public bathrooms and they have like, you could, for 25 cents, you could like buy a pad. Like, I had no idea what that was for, or why we had little trash cans
The
in our
worst
bathroom.
pads in the world.
Yeah.
The worst pads in the world that you don't want to use.
Yeah. Oh.
Right?
Who knows how long they were sitting in there
Ew.
too.
Yeah, I don't try and think
I
about
don't know if they expire.
Yeah.
But Ray, you mentioned like the tampons versus pads. Like, I also did not use tampons for a really long time.
Yeah, so scary.
I don't know why. Like, I don't know that I even knew about the toxic shock, but I think there was some like shame associated with it. Like, it was a slutty or something.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Even though it's not.
No, it's true
but
though.
there was some weird
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
I remember asking my mom finally sometime in high school if like she could buy a box of those. Yeah, but it was like an awkward conversation because I was like, sometimes they are more convenient than pads because pads can like, like be misaligned, and then you end up bleeding through your pants. But
I think it's only if you're an athlete or something, like a swimmer, then you would have to.
Oh
Do you know what I
yeah.
mean?
yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That was just like such a crazy time because, my mother had that conception, right? That like you're not supposed to wear tampons before you've lost your virginity, right? Or before you're like in a monogamous relationship or whatnot. And so like clearly that was an awkward conversation for her to have because my mother has like internalized misogyny and like thinking that women are meant to be there just to serve and please men. So I think maybe she knew, like, oh, I'm gonna send her off to some more objective education. And so we actually never talked about uh, women's anatomy or what happens to a woman's body. Like, we never actually had a deliberate conversation. I was just always learning things because she was constantly sick and ill my entire life. And so I was just constantly learning new things because of these situations, but there was never any kind of deliberate conversation. I'm curious for you guys, when it started becoming comfortable to talk to your parents or your moms.
Never. Never.
Short answer. But I think that was a big part of the tampon versus pad thing, because obviously one is outside your body versus one's inside your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the tampon, like, someone would actually have to explain to you more about your body.
Yeah.
Which is uncomfortable for many parents. I think of our generation, like, very few talk to their kids about it.
Yeah. And it's like
Which
such a
sucks.
shame.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's so terrifying.
Yeah, because it's
as
something.
a young girl. And
Yeah.
imagine if you actually explained it to, like, a middle schooler, like, hey, you're gonna get this period, like, every month for the next how many decades?
Yeah, rest of your life until you.
I would start crying.
So I went to the doctor recently, and I forgot how it came about, but I mentioned my daughter's 7, and she's like, oh, like, you should probably start talking to her about this soon. I was like, what? Like, she's 7. But they're like, it starts earlier now. Like, it could start around, like, 9. I'm like, so I haven't
That's
talked
what I've been hearing.
Yeah, I haven't talked to my daughter yet, but I'm going to have to go through this whole thing and be like, it's not a shameful thing. Happens every month. I don't want to deal with
How
that
do you
yet.
think you're going to approach it?
I was going to get a book.
Yeah.
Read her a book that will explain it. Oh gosh, I'm not ready.
You're like, if you're lucky like your mommy, it won't happen for a while.
long. Yeah, if only we could predict that. If only that was hereditary. Like,
but I think I learned when I was younger, like, it does kind of follow, like, at the mom's age. And I know I was 12.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, but then my mother was like, oh, I don't remember. So, like,
Well.
yeah, zero source of education from the people that you feel like are supposed to explain it to you. So I'm glad you're going to get a book. You kind of have a plan.
Yes.
For how you're going to teach it to your daughter.
I have to read these books first and then be like, is this the way I would explain it? Same thing about where babies come from. Oh my gosh. Like, I've had to, like, be like, let's talk about that later. Your dad can tell you to my son. I'm like,
because that is part of the conversation, like, that is part of the
Exactly.
conversation, like, to explain, why does this even happen? And so you do have to sort of and then, yeah. So it's like, how do we explain it in a way that isn't, like, scary or shameful, but, that, like, gives the woman or the girl agency, right? I spoke with somebody on my podcast who we talked about, like, how sex education is delivered. And there's a lot of, like, morality tied to it. There's a lot of, like, and, a lot of, like, religious influence, like, a lot of religions have influenced that conversation around morality and shame and fear and control. And then, unsurprisingly, we live in a society that wants to control women's bodies. And not to mention, like, the multi-billion-dollar industry, right, that keeps women feeling like they need to change their body so that the economy runs. And so, like, Moira, who was on my podcast, she was talking about how we have to not be afraid to, like, name the body parts as they are scientifically written, right? Don't give it nicknames like leaves and twigs, right? That you were talking about, Maryn, right? And to not, like, give it language that implies that this is something to be taboo. And I love, Leah, how you started off the episode talking about how, like, to bring light to things that are important to talk about. So yeah, there's a lot here. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of nervousness in us, like, talking
Yes.
about this even.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's
I
hard.
hate blood in general, and like to just say like, yeah, and then you bleed all over like a car, seat. I'm like, oh gosh, the visuals.
I know. Is
Yeah.
it too much?
I forgot what I was watching, but I think in like some European countries, because US is like very puritanical, and so they don't talk to you at all about sex or, very little. But I think in some European countries, they start talking to kids like very young, just about like feelings that may arise between different genders and holding hands. And so when it gets to that point, then it's like within this larger context of relationships and feelings. And I think that's so much more healthy, but we just don't have that in the States.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like the anatomy stuff is very disconnected from our own lives and everything, which I think makes it more dangerous for kids because they don't really get it.
That's
Yeah,
true.
exactly. And like when I was younger, like the word vagina was like so hard to say, so taboo. And like actually when we're taught what a vagina is, we think like everything like from the outside is also the vagina, but actually no, that's the vulva, right? So like, the way that we were even introduced to all of these terms, it's like, oh, everything is the vagina, everything that is down there. Like, it's like there's so much misinformation, or shall I say disinformation, because is it intentional?
Well, it's also like the language piece is weird because you're saying it's hard to say. It was hard for you to say vagina. Like, it's still hard for me to say it because we didn't grow up. I don't know. It's hard for me to even say the words, but
Yeah.
it's also the language piece is a little messed up. Like people use male and female body parts as like derogatory sayings.
That's true.
Right? Like for women, it's like calling you weak.
Mm-hmm.
And that part really pisses me off because women like have to be so strong to give birth.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that is like a patriarchal undertones to kind of demean women and men too, right? Like what do we call men when we think they're a jerk?
Mm-hmm.
It's their reproductive parts.
You're struggling.
We're gonna get comfortable saying the words on this podcast
at some point. Yeah, that's our goal. But that is so funny. That reminds me of a quote. I forget who said it. But it was really funny because she was like, they say that like women and like the vagina is weak and all of that. And they say like, the men's reproductive parts are so strong and masculine, but have you actually ever hit, a testicle? It's so painful. Whereas a vagina apparently can take a pounding, right?
Oh god.
So
okay, we're gonna use this video clip.
Yeah,
well, I can't remember the quote. The quote's actually better.
No, I like it.
I was like, wow, mind blown. So revolutionary.
We should have had some wine with this episode.
Honestly, then we would say it a lot more.
I feel like as soon as you said that, I'm like, I need something to drink.
You need to take a shot. So funny.
What was I gonna say?
You can't really say anything after that.
I know, we're gonna have like a musical interlude.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but it's funny. So I'm curious. Now that we're in this state, well, clearly there is still like this what we grew up with, and how hard it is to talk about this. That we're undoing and unlearning. Even now, like, are there things about being a woman that annoys you? Like, going to the OBGYN every year annoys me. Getting pap smears. Oh, my first mammogram is... Did I do it yet? Yeah, I think I did my first. I can't remember. I don't know. I like blocked
Oh
it
my
out.
gosh, you cannot forget your first
Maybe I
mammogram.
didn't do it yet. No, because I'm not 40 yet.
I think
you have to be 40.
40.
Okay, so we didn't do
Yeah,
it.
40.
It's like, my mom
Oh,
described
Ray,
it
did you
to
do
me
it?
in detail.
I
so-
did.
Ooh, how was
It
it?
is the most painful.
Oh,
No. Okay, yeah, I would remember
It
that.
is
No,
s-
have not done it.
Like, you think going to the OBGYN for a pap smear is painful? The mammogram is
God.
like, there are people who explain this much better than I can, but okay, let me just set you up, okay? So, you think a mammogram is okay, you're gonna like get your breasts examined, and for me, I'm just thinking, oh yeah, the doctor's just gonna come over and like, massage your boobs for a little bit. Like
I
that's
knew that wasn't gonna happen.
well, that's what I thought. It's like, oh, maybe a breast, like maybe a mammogram is like a breast exam that a doctor does that that's combined with an X-ray. Okay, but it's not an X-ray. It is like what they have to do is they have to squeeze your breasts. Like, how if you go to a microscope and you put like a sample underneath the microscope and you guys are laughing, but
I'm just laughing at the massage part.
Oh God.
But
I knew that they were gonna smash them. I already knew that was part of it.
okay, but like the smashing is so painful.
Oh no.
No. Is it like
I
blood
need to get a
pressure? Like
sensitive
don't they
technician.
stop at a certain point? Like they're like a blood
No.
pressure.
I
kind
mean,
of-
you can't.
Because
At some point, it has to
Yeah.
stop. You can't smash
it
that
goes
flat.
well, so the thing is they have to get it like from 4 different angles, right? So you have to go under that plate like multiple times, and like they have to smash it to actually get an accurate picture from 4 different sides on each
But
breast.
where's your head in this process? Like, do you have to go to the side, or
Oh
what
my
did you
goodness.
look like during?
Like, I think so. There are 2 plates, like one that comes from above and one that's like, the.
Oh,
And so, like, yeah, and I think my head was just like, I think they were pushing me away. I think there might have been 2 women doing this.
Very barbaric. Like this is so like you would think there's like technology that would like improve this whole experience. Like do guys have to
Well,
do this?
it wasn't designed.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
do
you know
guys
it
have to
wasn't
get their
designed by a
their
woman.
penises also smushed to check if like why is that?
Oh man, it's I don't know, but it.
Okay. Well, on
Mary's
a scale
like,
of 1 to 10, how painful
Yeah.
is it?
I
Like 10 being childbirth.
10 being childbirth.
Yeah,
So
this is gonna make it sound better.
well, I had a C-section.
What?
And
Okay.
so I don't know. Leah might have to be our barometer.
Yeah, that's not
here.
happening till after October.
Oh my
Let
goodness.
us know how it goes.
But it's very painful. I would say like 7 to 8.
Of next to C-section?
Well, okay. So if a C-section is a 10,
Mm-hmm.
I would. Okay. So it's really tricky because the pain of the mammogram is contained within like that 30-minute window, whereas the pain of a C-section goes on for like 8 weeks, and more actually. So I guess if you're just to take, a 30-minute slice from the C-section pain, and the 30-minute slice from a mammogram, I would say maybe like, okay, fine, a 6 or a 7, but it's super painful.
That's still pretty high.
Wait, how often do we
Yeah.
have to get it? Is it every year?
Yeah, so I think in the States it's a little bit different.
Okay.
In Korea, I think
Should look
it's
this
like
up.
yearly after, I think, age 30 something, like 38,
30
I
something?
think.
Oh.
Yeah, they recommend it
I feel like the
earlier.
US, they try to give the least amount. Because even the
Yeah.
pap smears have extended like to only 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And they don't even do the breast exam anymore at
Mm.
your physicals. So
Every 2 years? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Google's all
I
over the
I told
place.
my husband I'm never doing a mammogram ever again.
We're not recommending that you shouldn't.
yeah, go get your checkup.
Go get your checkup.
Yes,
Sorry,
do go get the
scared
checkup.
you.
Yes.
I'm scared now too with you, so you're not alone.
Oh,
Yes.
gosh.
But if you have a preparation for this is going to be the most painful thing, maybe you'll have enough. You'll muster up enough. I don't even know what to call it. Resilience beforehand.
Well,
Yeah.
my mom always said that like women always have a higher pain tolerance than men.
Mm.
She said she has a high pain tolerance. I think I do too. Like I've had procedures done and stuff. You know, I was just talking to my aunties about this yesterday, just like how when men get sick, it's like the end of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But it's like, yeah, so it's okay. We can get through it.
It's funny. I'm considering getting a tattoo later this month, like on a cruise ship we're on, like they have a tattoo parlor. And I was asking Kevin, like, how bad is it? Because he has a lot of tattoos. And I'm like, it'll be fine. And I keep thinking back to, like, I've had kids. Like, why is this scaring me? I'm still really nervous. Get a tattoo.
Yeah,
I'll
I'd
tell
be
you,
nervous too.
I'll compare tattoos to mammograms later this year
There
when
you
I've gone
go.
through both.
I'll make a Canva
Yeah.
graphic.
The
Yeah.
spectrum of pain tolerance in
pain.
women.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's so
gosh.
funny.
But I don't know if we answered the question.
No.
Yeah, I don't
Anything
even
else?
remember the
Tangent?
question.
What's annoying about women's health?
The pill.
Ooh.
Oh.
100% the pill.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never went on the pill. I've always been curious about that.
I went on it a little bit in college more because they prescribe it for like if you have acne or you have this and that. And then it sent me like on an emotional roller coaster and I had to stop taking it. I didn't really even need it. And then I was off of it for a really long time, but then I started again like in my 30s and it really impacted me like terribly, like mental health wise, physically, every way. But I didn't even figure it out until later on. I was actually listening to a podcast and then I heard about this documentary that Ricky Lake did called The Business of Birth Control. And when I watched that, I'm like, oh my God, I have all the same symptoms. And so I finally got off of it. And like immediately when I got off of it, all my symptoms went away.
Wow.
And it bothers me that it's like all of it is put on the woman,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, they've tried to develop male birth control how many times, and the men, it's like, oh, it's too much for the men. Well, what do you think we've been going through?
Yeah.
Not even to mention that like birth control has killed a lot of women. I mean, that's what they were highlighting in the documentary. So
That's so. I read something a while back, and they were talking about how, like, a woman, no matter how many partners she might have, she can only have one child every year. Whereas a man that could have multiple partners and have an infinite amount of babies. So it's like, why are we controlling women's bodies when it comes to, the argument of population control, right? Because that's so stupid.
Yeah.
I just had Nick Cannon pop into my head. But yes. He's a good illustration of what can happen.
Oh gosh. I had the same thing happen in college with birth control. I remember I didn't realize it until I stopped. And yeah, like cuz I felt like there was like a fog like over me and I thought it was just normal college stuff like like stress and stuff. But I remember the day I stopped, I woke up the next morning and I swear the sunlight was like shining brighter and I was just like happier. I'm like, "What?" So yeah, after that I would take like low, like very, very low hormone. And then what I was gonna say is I'm using a ring now. And it's not actually specifically for birth control, but and then we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I don't know if this is a perimenopause symptom, maybe, But in the last year or so, my period started getting heavier. And I've already started to be anemic, but it would get like every month when that time of the month came, like I started getting more lightheaded, fatigued. Like I'd have to, like, it would knock me out for like a day. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Like, I'm like, I dreaded my period every month. Like really, like to the point, like I would go to like urgent care and I finally saw my doctor. I was like, I need to do something to like control these periods. Like, it's too much, like, like it's not normal. And then first she was like, well, it is normal because of your age
Mm.
and all this stuff. I was like, but this is horrible, like I'm suffering. And then she was like, but there is one thing you could try. And basically, the ring I have is called Anavera, and it's like a
Mm.
different hormone. It's not estrogen, but you can keep it in for like a year, up to a year, like nonstop, and you don't get periods. And like,
Mm.
game changer for me. Like, maybe not for everyone, so this is not medical advice. But like, yeah, like if you have really heavy periods and suffer from anemia, like there are options out there. And I wish someone told me sooner, because I thought I would
Mm.
just have to like suffer until like I completely stopped periods for good. But I think that was the worst. Like I didn't know how else to explain it. Like I really thought I was gonna die like every month because it was that bad. And it's like, I don't know, I was just like so frustrated. I was like, why does my body have to do this? And it's like
Mhm.
a self-repeating cycle, right? You lose enough blood, you try and get enough blood before the next month, and then if you don't, then you feel even worse. And
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
that sounds
That's
like
happened to me
awful.
too. They've gotten heavier. And I talked to my OB and she said that as long as it's not like heavy throughout the whole 5 weekday cycle, usually for me, it's like the first two
Yeah,
days.
same.
And I also get anemic. So she's like, maybe you're just losing all your blood, in the first 2 days versus spread out. Um, but I've had similar experiences.
Yeah,
It's
my
So,
scary.
periods have always been really, really heavy, like most of my life. And I'm currently meeting with an Eastern medicine doctor, and like we've been kind of making some kind of like we have a plan and stuff like that. And uh recently I've been noticing that my flow is so much better, and like it's not clotty and it's not like super heavy. But originally I was telling her like I experienced this excruciating pain,
Yeah.
like I don't even know where it is. Like I originally thought it was my appendix because my digestion isn't very good. And she was like, that kind of sounds like your ovaries. And so we were talking about our menses and or my menses, and she was saying like this last time I was like, I almost had zero blood come out of me. And she said something like, oh, maybe your body didn't build enough blood this cycle. And I was just like, I hear that a lot in Eastern medicine, but it's still a mystery to me. And so I had her kind of explain that, and I was like, well, how do I generate enough blood in my body? And she was like, rest. And so I was like, oh, that's something that I don't do. Like I'm constantly working, and my full-time job is being a mom. And I just remember getting very emotional, and she was like, yeah, like um, women, when they're not building enough blood, it means that they need more rest and things like that. And I was just kind of thinking, like, that made me think of how, like, even the workday is designed around the man, right? The man's hormones and where they're the most alert, and things like that. And also, I was reading that even the reason why air conditioning is so high in workplaces is because it's designed around the man's comfort, because he's usually wearing a blazer, right? And so they wanted to keep the man wearing the blazer and to keep that temperature optimal for him to keep that blazer on. And so, like, there's just so much about the workday, about society being designed with the male standard and the comfort of a man. And I'm not saying here that, oh, men are more comfortable than women, or that, like, whatever the case, but just like, just sharing what I've heard and the observations that I've made. And so, yeah, it's like, and we're just learning now that, like, science for so long has been thought that women are small men. But actually, we have periods, like, that's not true. We're not just small men. And so there's a lot of different things that we have to unpack. And even like neuroscience, right? Like, they always thought that women's brains and men's brains are exactly the same, but it's turning out that actually, no, it's not. And so much of what we actually know in science has been formulated and centered around the man. And so we're learning a lot. And so the future may, yield a lot of different new things that we've never known. And hopefully we will have less discomfort, and, we'll have more technologies to, like your ring experience, right, Leah, to make us actually be able to withstand some of the discomfort and excruciating pain that we experience.
Yeah, which it was like normalized, like, oh, well, that's normal. Like, yeah, but it's still annoying and frustrating.
Yeah, there's I definitely recommend The Business of Birth Control, and then Ricky Lake did a documentary called The Business of Being Born. It was done a long time ago, but it echoes what Ray is saying, that much of Western medicine is built around capitalism. So an example is like with birth in European countries, a lot of times they would let the woman stand up because gravity would do its job, and it's much more comfortable on the women. In terms of giving birth, like, actually lying back on your back is the hardest position to be in, to push, but they only do that for liability purposes because they don't want to be sued if the woman was ever to fall. And they kind of, I think, talk about the history of midwives, because there are so many, especially women of color, often, had so much knowledge about women's bodies, and they had been helping with the birth process for ages. But then all these white men came in and they took over, and it was actually very torturous for women in the beginning. So it's really good to have that context so you can kind of advocate for yourself and seek out options that will be more comfortable for you. But yeah, it definitely pisses me off, like, how women's pain is dismissed and minimized within our system. Like you're saying, I mean, I've heard countless stories of friends and acquaintances who have passed out from period pain, from excessive bleeding, and they're just like, it's fine, go home. And then it turns out that they have a huge fibroid, or maybe they have cancer, or there's something really serious going on. There's also another documentary on Netflix called The Bleeding Edge that talks a lot about, the device industry and how unregulated it is, but how they test it on many women of color and use them as their lab rats. And there's so many stories just like of ignoring women's pain, not listening to women. So that definitely needs to change.
Yeah. And kind of on a tangent, right? Like, there is this was from the 1619 project that I read about it, but like, is it the oximeter? I forget what device it is, but it's like it's where you breathe, and they measure like your oxygen levels, or like, is it no, I'm totally getting it wrong. So I might have to put this in our show notes if people are interested. But basically, like, they used to think that Black people have a higher tolerance for pain. So, like, I feel like I have to yank this out because I'm not getting the facts straight.
No, well, I've heard something similar, because I actually saw screenshots of medical textbooks that, med students are still using to this day. And there was a section on, like, cultural notes, basically. And they basically said that Black people have a higher tolerance for pain. So they're more dismissed. We already know the mortality rates are much higher for Black women giving birth.
Right.
They said something like, Asian people are very stoic, and so they might not show their pain. They're basically just stereotypes
Yeah.
written in.
Ugh.
Yeah, so it's really sad. And then so much of the research in medicine, whether it's pharmaceuticals, surgery, it's all based, even the BMI, right? It's all based on white men. It's not even based on women. And if it is women, it's mainly white women. Because my mom actually had a Japanese doctor who told her that some of the like prescription drugs, are said to help women, but actually they're contraindicated for Asian women. They have the opposite effect. So just like we were talking about in our mental health episode, how it's important to have a therapist who maybe you identify, I feel like it's really important too in the healthcare field to find maybe people that you identify with and who might know more of these nuances, because the system really wasn't built for us.
On that,
I know. Where's that glass of
I
wine
know.
when we need it?
I was gonna be like upbeat, but I'm struggling with this question. But I'm curious if you all have an answer about what's been the most surprising or anything positive about being a woman or having a female body. If you can think of anything.
We need that Jeopardy song because I'm going to need time to
I
think.
know, right? Well, okay. So I don't know if you've had this experience, Leah. I don't think so, but maybe not. But we never know. So like when I was younger, like I really had a lot of struggle around like the way that I look. And I know we're going to talk about this in a future episode, but I had always felt so much shame around my body. And I never really realized until I was pregnant and until I had my daughter how much my body could do. And like it kept me and my daughter alive, for like 9 months. And then it recovered and continues to give me life every single day. And so the fact that I saw and witnessed my body being able to do so much, I was incredibly proud. And I felt so sorry that I was so mean to my body for, 30 whatever years. And after witnessing that for firsthand, I was like, okay, this is the power that I have. This is the power I bring to the world. And it gave me a lot of pride that I could share my life with another little one. And so, yeah, to answer your question in a short way, I guess, that is something that is positive, I think, about having a woman's body.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think it goes to creation. But I still tell Kevin, like, I wish you could be pregnant too. Like, and not have to do this. For 9 months, can't drink, can't eat sushi.
Oh,
They would be
yeah.
dadzillas. They would be so much worse.
They'd be staying in their bed for 9 months. Like, I can't do anything.
Yeah, because you've seen those videos even just with the period pain or the cramp simulators, and the guys are like, oh, it's like, oh my gosh, that's just another day for us.
That reminds me of Margaret Cho used to,
Ooh,
she had
yeah.
a comedy skit, or there was like a sketch that she did like many, many years ago. And she was like, can you imagine if men had periods? And then, oh my gosh.
Society
and
would
she
be
was-
so
It would
different.
be even worse. It's already bad.
Well,
but-
society, we would have like every like 4th week of the month would probably be like a week off or something. That'd be great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
That's
petition for that.
Right.
Let's do it.
Get the period simulators.
Seriously.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have to add, I mean, I think women are unbelievably strong and beautiful, and yeah, it's a journey to kind of, recognize that within ourselves. But I actually read, the hero's journey is like Joseph Campbell. It's kind of like the structure that a lot of books and movies are based off of. But I learned that Joseph Campbell, who created the hero's journey, he actually, I think a woman who was like a scholar asked him, well, what about the woman? And he was like, oh, the woman just has to be herself and be there. She doesn't go on the hero's journey.
Ew.
So yeah, he was a sexist. But there is a book called The Heroine's Journey. So I read this one, and it talks about these societies that existed, you know, before patriarchy. And there were these societies where like men and women were very equal, and actually women were revered. You know, they had all these goddesses because women could give birth. And at that point, you know, people revered women like, oh my God, it's a miracle. Like you can create life. That's the most beautiful, powerful thing, right? So I feel like I try to tap into that, and it's nice to educate yourself about these societies that existed before patriarchy ruined everything.
I want to check out
Have
that
you
book.
guys? Yes. Have you guys read what is it called? Cassandra Speaks. It's by Elizabeth F. Lesser. She is I think co-founder of the Omega Institute in New York. I didn't read the book, but I spoke to a former professor who was telling me about this book and how like 5,000 years ago, before 5,000 years ago, you know, like you were saying, Maryn, like women and men had like these equal um, statuses, I guess, and were like equally contributing to society. And then 5,000 years ago is when we started recording history. And that's about the same time that the patriarchy started to form. And so it was really the opinions and perspectives from the male that was being recorded. And so, you know, there is a lot there. And, you know, I have this theory that neurodivergence is actually a patriarchal concept, and that if we had not recorded history from such a male-centric view from when we started recording history, that neurodivergence would be the norm. And because I actually think that women are neurodivergent, and it's like, or 80% of women are neurodivergent and 20% aren't. And maybe with male, it's that 80% are, I don't know. I haven't figured out this theory, but
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to reminds me of like the intuitive, you know, because for us, like even biologically, all of our parts are internal, right?
yeah.
And we have no education about our bodies, like we were mentioning. But we do have, and like you were talking about the brains, like women have more gray matter. So our
Yes.
brains tend to be way more connected. And I can see even the difference with my husband. He's way more compartmentalized. And like to me, everything's connected, and it's part of the way that our bodies are. Our bodies are more complex than men's. But we do have this intuitive power. Like our bodies are so powerful. We're just not empowered to learn about them. But we see over time, like the Salem witch trials, right? Like that intuitive power that we have as women. Like I've really learned to lean into it more, but because of patriarchy, like we've really been villainized because of it. That form of intelligence, you know, even through, I'm sure, your birthing experience, which we'll probably cover on another podcast. I'm sure you've had moments where you can feel things, you know, within your body. You listen to things, you know, when something might be wrong, you know, right? So, yeah, it's, we just have to lean into that more.
We need to step into
Yeah.
our power. Down with the patriarchy.
But yeah, but in our society, yeah, burn it down per usual. But within our society, it's really like minimized. Like, oh, that's just
Yeah.
woo woo. You're crazy.
That's what pisses
you
me
know.
off. Yeah.
But I love like the women now, like who are like me, like really into astrology and intuition, and they're just like, I'm a witch. Like they just like,
own
I am
it.
a witch. Like they claim it.
We should
exactly.
do that. We should do an episode on just like tarot readings and like go all in.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a full on witch, but I can pretend. I'm in training.
Yeah.
So the other part of this topic was around menopause and perimenopause, which is new to me. So I mentioned a little bit of this before the episode, but I think I was in a Facebook group and someone said something about perimenopause, like what are the symptoms or something, and I was like, what is that? because I was just like anticipating, oh, after your years where you have periods and get pregnant, eventually you turn 50 something and then it stops. Yay, no more periods. And I just didn't even think about the shift that your body has to make to wind down all the things that, that we're talking about that make us different, that, do all this cool stuff like create babies and produce milk and whatever, right? Like, yeah, so perimenopause. Have you all heard about it? What do you know about it? Are you going through it?
I heard
Oh
about it
my
from you, Leah.
gosh.
So
Oh,
you
God.
tell me, like, you're the first person I heard about it from, and then I started mentioning it to my other friends to let them know,
This could
hey,
be happening.
you might be, yeah.
I could get here. I'll give a few facts and then Ray, you look like you're about to. So perimenopause. So I pulled a few facts from the internet, so just asterisk. But apparently it begins around, well, so Ray had a comment here. So it could happen around 35 or 40, like to start, and could last like 10 years, really carrying you all the way to when menopause happens. And during perimenopause, your hormone levels are already starting to decrease. So, like, think about the 10 years before menopause, your body's starting to transition out of reproductive years. And these also can cause symptoms, right? Like, we know from birth control, like hormone stuff. Imagine like your body's hormones are also depleting. So then you could get hot flashes already, have trouble sleeping, have brain fog, mood changes, even migraines. Like if your migraines are getting more frequent, that could be one of the first signs that you're starting to get perimenopause. And and menopause is defined as when you have 12 months consecutively with no periods. Like literally, like you can't call it menopause until you've had a year of no periods. So anyway, yeah, so it's just mind-boggling to think like how come no one talks about this? Like no one preps us. I go to the doctor and like I have to ask my doctor like what is perimenopause? Cuz right, Maryn, like isn't that weird? Like our body's going through these changes and no one yet again is telling us about it. Just like as a teenager when you get
Well,
your
even
period.
just like having a cycle, you go
Yeah.
through so many hormonal changes within the month. And for the longest time, I used to be like, because I would, right before I get my period every month, I would just start questioning my whole entire life. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like, what am I doing with my life? I'd have an existential crisis. And then I would be like, and then my period would come and I'd be like, oh, that's what
That's
it
what
is.
it is.
But nobody tells you about any of that.
No.
It's just like, yeah, women are just on a constant journey. So for a while, I used to put it in my calendar when I was going to get it so I could kind of schedule around it.
Oh yeah.
And there are actually, I think, books out there that kind of talk about, trying to live your own life within your own hormonal, you know, cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are apps, right? But I wish it was integrated into Google, because like I do a lot of things around Google and like all of my life is on Google, like even when to drink water, even when to like take my certain medications, like it's all into Google. I wish everything was just
So what
part of it.
I have a hack. Well, I mean, a very manual hack, but I've actually written the word period, just marked it as like
Mm.
all day, and I schedule, and I had a pretty regular cycle. Well, before I wore the ring, but like pretty like 24, 28 days. And then
Oh,
that's
okay.
when I would just recur it forever. And then once I actually have it, like I know it's coming the week of, and I actually start it, then I'll adjust that month to the current day. So then
Mm.
it stays whatever 24, 28 days out, and then I'll at least have a
Wow.
general idea of like when the next month it's gonna happen and like what I should anticipate. But yeah, I don't know if that helps. Right,
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that is a
I
good
just put it
idea.
in like when it starts and ends in my
yeah.
calendar.
Oh, because yeah, they
But that's partially for family planning
oh,
too. But
I was
yeah,
gonna say it
Yeah,
annoys me
yeah.
when they ask you when you go to the doctor and like when was your last period. I'm like I don't know.
I know.
Like I don't just remember. Let me check my calendar.
Well, I bought those strips. It's partly for family planning, but it's called Pregmate. I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys use
I had
those. It's a
that.
pack from Target. Yeah, and they have the ovulation strips and the pregnancy strips. But they have a really good free app because I just started using it,
Oh.
and you can chart your cycle in there and whatever. I feel like anybody can download it,
Wait, what does it
but
Oh.
I
do?
recommend
What
it.
do the strips do? I'm confused.
Oh, for testing for ovulation or pregnancy.
What,
That's their
like you pee
product,
on
but they
it?
actually
Like how do you test? Okay. Got
You dip it in your pee.
Okay. Got it.
To
To all the listeners
nothing
out
is
there.
off the table now.
To all the listeners who also don't know what that is, I got you.
But yeah, the app is like the Pregmate app.
Ah.
It's pretty good. It's very user friendly.
Yeah. I think it's
But yeah, Ray, tell us
your
perimenopause.
perimenopause. Are you in it?
Give us all the
oh my
What to
gosh.
expect?
Well, I think I've been in perimenopause for a really long time, even before I was pregnant. There's a person, Dr. Mary Claire Haver, and she recently has been on like all the podcast circuit, talking about what perimenopause is. And like you said, Leah, like menopause is just one day. It's like that one day when your all of your eggs are retired, and you can't ever have children, right? That's like just a single day, she says. But everything leading up to that is perimenopause, right? And she talks about something very important, and I haven't done a lot of research, but also I'm not a medical doctor, so I am more inclined to trust her, who is a medical doctor and focuses on this aspect. She calls herself a menopause doctor. So everybody listening and you're wondering what perimenopause is, definitely check her out. She says a lot of important things, and she also tells us sort of like what has happened in research, because I think a while back they were doing a study on estrogen, like hormone therapy, right, to supplement estrogen for women whose estrogen declines during perimenopause. And they found in this study that there was a correlation between increased breast cancer risk with those who had done this hormone therapy. But they went in, looked at the study completely. The study has been trashed. And that, like, when you are experiencing perimenopause, or when you are having certain symptoms, that, you know, hormone therapy is something you could talk to about with your doctor. And it's a safe thing. And so I know I'm like talking about all of this before actually talking about perimenopause, what it feels like, but, you know, there's a lot of like brain fog. There's a lot of like the migraine stuff. There's a lot of increased volatility in your emotions. And a lot of, you know, like you were talking about, Maryn, like the connection part, like everything is connected. And like we start to lose, I think, the gray matter disappearing in women's brains. I don't really know the science behind that, but I feel like after pregnancy and having a child, like a lot of gray matter disappeared in my brain, and so the connectivity is a lot less. But I know that like my emotional dysregulation is more frequent, and I just like, if you know what is that called? I'm blanking right now, but the symptoms, PMS, like it kind of feels like PMS on steroids, like, cause it's constant, like all the time.
I think there is a term because my girlfriend has PMDD. It's like
Oh.
premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Mm,
It's basically just like very intense PMS symptoms.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's correlated with, you know, so many women also have PCOS. So there's so many different things that can be going on too. But
Yeah. I think I heard that PCOS is related to like blood sugar dysfunction as well. I know, I mean, like, there's just so much about science that I don't know, because none of us are scientists. Well, I mean, Leah, you have a psychology major, and you almost went into nursing, so you're probably the most likely of
but
us.
to be honest, like when it comes to women's health, I learn the most anecdotally.
Oh, that's
It's
true.
in conversations like this when people are talking, because the doctors don't always know,
No, I don't read about
and
this
they're just
stuff.
like,
No.
yeah, so.
Wait, so did you say that hormone therapy can help with perimenopause, or are you saying like we just like have to
Yes.
do? Okay, okay,
I think
Yeah.
Michelle Obama does it. Like a lot of influential women do it.
okay.
Because
Yeah.
it probably levels out some of those symptoms because it keeps you a little bit more stable versus like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's kind of like what happens in our cycle, right? Like when all of your hormone levels drop, your mood also drops.
yeah. And if that was like
Mhm.
normalized, then we wouldn't feel so weird about it. But we do all this stuff so that our hormones stay regulated forever.
Yes. And I just Googled perimenopause symptoms because I feel like we need to kind of share something. And this is through hopkinsmedicine.org. So mood changes, changes in sexual desire, trouble concentrating, headaches, night sweats, vaginal dryness, hot flashes, trouble with sleep, and the list goes on. So, any of this sound borderline like, aha, definitely check that out. Definitely check out Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She's been recently going through the entire podcast circuit. So, find her speaking to your favorite expert or podcast host. And yeah, check that out.
I'm worried because I just started getting a headache yesterday. I don't know the difference between a headache and a migraine.
Migraine's worse,
Oh,
right?
I can
I
tell
don't
you.
know. Okay. Let's say it was a headache.
Yeah, let's say it's so a migraine can go on for multiple days. I think in my it starts usually in one part of the head for a while, and I get nauseated. I also feel like the lights kind of they impact it. Any kind of change in like a smell can trigger it. Um, and also dairy is a really big trigger for me. So I don't eat dairy anymore, but I still get migraines sometimes. And so definitely staying hydrated. But headaches, I feel like they go away after a couple of hours of rest and care. But I think with a migraine, it can go up to like a week. Yeah, it's painful.
I just have a short rant about, how we're talking about like how in the patriarchy they like hold so many things about women's biology against you. It's just like the hormonal thing.
Yeah.
Or oh, she's not, I hate that because we literally that's just a fact of our life. Like I hate that that's used like you even see it in politics with like, women candidates like, oh, they get their period, they're going to be so
They're
emotional
gonna have
or hormonal.
yeah, they're PMSing right now. Like you can tell.
If anything, I think women are so much stronger for like having to just go through life with this from the time we're like kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
And you know what?
I don't think
Anger
men
is
could
an
do it.
emotion. Anger is an emotion. And what's even scarier about anger is that anger is the base form of, so anger is activation, right? It's the behavior, I guess. It's like the manifestation of a base emotion, which is fear. And like there are so many different like things that go within anger, right? So there's like you can be fearful, you can be worried, you can there's so much that goes in with it. And what comes along ultimately is to control, right? So I feel like anger is like more dangerous, it can be more insidious. We don't know where it came from. Whereas all of the other emotions that, like you said, Maryn, that, we get weaponized for, or like that people use our biology against us for, like at least we can name, well, unless you have alexithymia, which I kind of have. And so I see a therapist and we work on it. But, I think, Maryn, you were going to say something.
Well, it's just that the expectation for women in our patriarchal society is that we never show those quote unquote negative emotions. Men show anger and aggression all the time,
right,
in the workplace and everyday life, and
mm-hmm.
It's just taken as a normal
it's
thing.
Normal, exactly.
But especially as Asian
Mm-hmm.
women, we're expected to just be pleasant all the time, serve everyone,
Smile.
even though we're going on a crazy hormonal ride every month.
Yep.
So that's why you see when women do start going through perimenopause or menopause, they just start being like, I don't give two F's what you think.
Yeah,
I'm having hot flashes.
Right.
That's right.
You know.
Like, we're finally just like trying to own it. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we did a good job covering the gamut of women's health from periods to perimenopause. I did have one more book I haven't read yet, but it's on my list, called The Menopause Manifesto by Dr. Jen Gunter. So check that out as well, and we'll add all of these to the show notes. But yeah, any final words of advice, last thoughts before we wrap it up? Ray, you want to go?
Well, I just wanted to say, just a disclaimer that none of us are doctors, and that if there's anything that you heard us talk about today, definitely do your due diligence and do your own research. But hopefully that maybe we threw out some words and some concepts or some theories or opinions and perspectives that might incite you on a journey of being your best self, being your best woman.
Yeah, I echo that. I think it's the quote that Leah started with. It's just, I think it's important for us to have these conversations out in the open, because it's important and our experiences are valid. And so I think we can all just help each other by being more open with it. And then the two books that I have regarding the pill, this book, Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton, really helped me just in terms of like any fears I had of getting off of it and what might happen. So she has really good tips and even like recipes that you can help if that's something you're looking into. And then I actually haven't cracked this open yet, but this is like a Bible. It's called Taking Charge of Your Fertility, the Definitive Guide to Natural Birth Control, Pregnancy Achievement, and Reproductive Health. And I think it also covers menopause, and it's by Toni Weichler. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully you are proud as a woman to have a woman's body, and we get you. Like, it's not fun. People don't always get it, especially people of the opposite sex. So here we are. But yeah, glad you were able to join this episode with us. If you haven't already, follow us at Your Asian Besties on social media, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite listening app. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh, I had to.
Yeah, I really needed a drink. I didn't.
I had to turn the AC on a little bit more. Oh man.
Hot flash.
Yeah, I'm sweating.